Good evening and welcome to Tuesday evening on Raconteurs News. My name's Andy Young. This is Raconteurs News and I'm joined as ever by the one and only Jason Holmes. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Andy. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm pretty good, mate. I've managed to just about shake off this end of summer cold that I've got and feeling pretty peachy.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a theme, hasn't it? I went down with someone on Friday, which just so happened to coincide with the end of my working sort of month that I had, or covering for my dad. But Friday, this weekend, I've been a bit stinky. My missus has had it as well. So, yeah, it's the end of summer colds, but we'll get them out of the way. We don't need any vaccines. All we need is we just need to get some vitamin C to get it out of us, and then we're immune from it. From the future, I would imagine.
And on the subject of natural health, I suppose now would be a good time to bring in tonight's guest, because tonight's guest has gone above and beyond the call of duty this evening for us, essentially, because she's got up at the crack of dawn all the way over in New Zealand. So welcome to Raconteurs News for the first time, Rose Renton. Good evening, Rose.
Good evening to you both. Thank you for having me.
Evening, Rose. A rose between two thorns.
I know.
Yes, well, no more corrupting Rose with stories about nakedness in the hot tub and burning your willy when you're stirring your coffee, Jason.
Okay, we'll leave that aside for one time when we're perhaps... I'll write her a letter, the old-fashioned letter, and send it over to New Zealand. But obviously, it's good morning to Rose.
Mm.
It is good morning from me, but good evening to you guys over there.
So it's Wednesday morning where you are. So what should we look forward to tonight?
A lot of people that can't stand up, even though they would choose to stand up, or simply they'd lose their jobs. So yeah, really interesting a day of life of me. Probably not what I would have imagined for my life, but an amazing cause, and what a difference cannabis can make as a medicine.
Absolutely. So could you start by telling the listeners how you actually got involved with cannabis campaigning and what really brought...
Yeah, sure. I'm mum to 7 children, and some people gasp, but yes, the 7 fabulous children. Eldest being Jess at 21. Alex would have been 19... he would have been 20 this year. We'll talk about Alex. Molly 16, Hugh 13, Harriet, this is where it gets difficult, 11, and twins, Jack and Leo, are 7. My background in work is feng shui, so I work with environmental energy. I've done that for over 20 years. I've been trained with a Chinese practitioner to the authentic form of feng shui, so it's not just about toilet seats and wind chimes, for those who often wonder. It's a science. I need a compass reading, I need the age of a house, I need the occupants' dates of birth, and yes, I can change life by changing colours and changing furniture around. So essentially that's what I do as a career, as well as raise children. I was born in Singapore to New Zealand parents, and then came back and grew up rurally in New Zealand from the age of 2. From age, just thinking what age, about 18 I was introduced to cannabis for the first time. I'd grown up around prohibition with the war on drugs, and I remember it well on TV. And knew that it was an evil drug, or that, believed it was an evil drug. So my introduction to it was up here in Nelson. I was on holiday with a bunch of friends, and some young guys came along with it. And I remember thinking, well, how harmless can it be? I smoke cigarettes, I'm going to have a puff. And that was my intro. And that night I laughed harder than I think I've ever laughed. I was always a bit of a light-hearted kid anyway. I thought, wow, what a fascinating thing. There was no hangover. And that was my introduction to cannabis. I didn't dive into the world of illicit drugs at all. I went back to my life in Canterbury. And then at different times I connected to cannabis over the years. So it's always been in my life in some way or another. 2000, the beginning of 2015, well, I guess it started in the spring of 2014, Alex, my eldest son, couldn't understand the laws around cannabis. Mm-hmm. He was interested in cannabis. Now let's talk briefly about Alex. Alex was a very capable young man, an excellent student, a rep rugby player, self-taught guitarist, great friend, great son. You know, one of those special people. If you met Alex, you certainly were touched by him, whether you're an adult or a child. So a very cool young man. Anyway, so he couldn't understand the laws around cannabis. I explained my experience of cannabis with his dad, that if there is bipolar or mental health issues, it can become a fixated issue or a problem. And if you get caught with cannabis, that's the biggest risk by the law. Because when Alex was a small baby, we were raided by the police, and that memory stays with me today because of the way we were treated, and the aggressive, unnecessary fear that was put into us over growing plants. So that was Alex's very early childhood. So in 2014, when he'd been around it a few years, we'd lived in Golden Bay, and Golden Bay in New Zealand is I guess, the home of cannabis, or great grown outdoor cannabis. And often I think people come over to try Golden Bay's cannabis. So he'd grown up in his youth there, so he'd been introduced to it. So when we arrived in Nelson, he wanted to know, you know, why can't you just simply grow this for yourself? Why do I have to try and find it? I don't know the quality of it. The cost of it's ridiculous. This is insane. Mm-hmm. Would you grow it? Yeah, I said, I'll happily grow it with you. I had a husband that wasn't very impressed. My eldest daughter wasn't very impressed. And I said, well, if anything happens, I'll happily take the rat. So and funnily enough, the landlord gifted us the plants. It was his house. So we grew it together. And I said, if you want to learn about a plant, you're best to grow it yourself. They grow easily. They're beautiful. And once they got too big, we put them into the shed and removed the roof so they could get enough light to continue through to the end of their life. At the beginning of 2015, Alex started a chefing course, and he had to get up really early, and he was also in line for a rep rugby position in our top rugby team here in Nelson. So he said, I'm going to stop smoking it for a period of time, just because it's important for me to focus on getting up early and fitness. So Alex had a couple of months off it. And he also wanted to see if it was physically addictive or psychologically addictive, I think. He was one of those people that has to find out everything. During that period, he studied a lot about it. He studied the medicinal side of it. He would follow me around with his laptop talking about, have you read this, Mum, about cannabis? And I'd say, oh, no, I didn't know that. Oh, well, it works with epilepsy and it's used in Parkinson's. And he was talking about the law changes. And so as an academic, he was fascinated by what was going on in the world around cannabis as a medicine, considering it was the first time he'd ever grown. I was getting married.
He sounds like a fascinating young man, and somebody that we'd all like to aspire for as kids to be. He sounds like somebody that we'd all like to have as a child. A question asker and somebody who wants to know things.
He didn't ever have an opinion unless he'd learnt something about the subject he was talking about. And he was very much a knowledge person. And he struggled with insomnia, which is, I think, why he liked cannabis, because it enabled him a much better sleep. And so he had a mind that never stopped, but he also had a heart of gold. He was really a blessing to have a child like that. And he was a gift, without a doubt. He was just one of those people that you knew was one out of the box. So going through that process of, at 18, not smoking it, which I think was a really big thing, and then talking to me about that, and then growing it, and then heading into this different career, it was a big life-changing sort of thing in his life. In late March, he got he said it had like flu-like. He sort of felt fuzzy in the head. And sort of had an achy back, and that was on the Monday. So I picked him up from his course, and he was just really quiet and lethargic. Now, Alex did not have a GP. He'd never had any serious rugby injuries. He'd never been to a doctor. He'd only ever had homeopathics and natural medicine. I don't think we always need an answer, and I think that's almost like our medical profession. They honestly believe they know everything, and if they just got out of their own way and opened up their mind and went back to nature they would learn so much. But I think they're just really comfortable in killing people with pharmaceutical drugs. Like I've seen it. I really do. I've seen too much of it.
I think perhaps you take a lot of comfort from perhaps thinking that that was his raison d'etre. You know, that was the reason he was born. It's the reason. We've all got a reason that we're here, and that maybe was his reason.
Yeah, I totally agree. He had to come in with a really strong mother, with a really strong opinion, and I'm definitely that. I don't have any fear in saying what I think at any stage during this process. I think they thought I was going to break. That, you know, they keep telling you to rest and to sleep and blah, blah, blah. It was extremely patronising, and I think most people in this situation may have. But I knew his strength, and I knew what he was capable of. And for me, yeah, his life was a blessing in 19 years, and he left us with a message. And I think one of his friends posted, "Oh, look, Alex has made it to the Stoners Cookbook," because there was this big notice that Alex had passed away. Now, I tell you right now, as an 18-year-old, he would say, well, you know, if I achieved anything else, I ended up in the Stoners Cookbook. I did the best I did in my rugby as far as a rugby team could be. I was loved in my chefing course. He was, you know, he was the, sort of the class pet. Yeah, he was loved, and he'd said, I might have lived only 19 years, but I made sure that every day was counted. And to go down in cannabis law reform history for New Zealand, very proud young man.
And you must be a proud mother as well. I mean, my daughter's 19 now, and I couldn't be any more proud of her. But I keep saying to her, "You're here for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but you're here for a specific reason, and it's your job to find that reason and to fulfil it." And it sounds like that Alex has pretty much done that. He was here for a reason, and I think that gives great comfort to everybody, really. I mean, he must have had lots of friends. He's 19 years old. He must have had a plethora of friends that were all, you know, mourning his loss and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can look at it two ways. You can go, "Oh, isn't it sad he didn't do all that?" Or you can look at the 19 years that he did touch people's hearts and was who he was. He was never pushed around. He was never judgmental. He was a friend to anyone, and often the more quiet, less confident people. And Alex believed the world could be a better place if we could just not judge, support, be kind to one another, and be allowed to grow cannabis. That's really a basic synopsis of who he was, but it really is who he was. And therefore it's come through, it's rattled the medical world, and it's time to look at change. Because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a miracle cure that we're after, but we're after equality, and we're after the freedom to choose. So for me, if I got diagnosed tomorrow with a terminal illness, I wouldn't go near a doctor or a GP. I respect that people do that, and that's their choice, but I'd like my choice, and this is what this is about, is a freedom to choose how you live or die, or how you choose to treat your body. And that, for me, is what cannabis medicine is about. We're not asking all the doctors to come on board and their patients, but we are asking for equality and equal rights around choosing cannabis as a medicine, and we'll get that. As I said the other day on a New Zealand Herald interview, to stop me, they would have to arrest me or kill me, and that's where it's at for me. I won't stop till the laws are changed.
I'm sure we all admire your courage for taking that stance, Rose. I know you did say that you've got a petition that's going to be presented to New Zealand Parliament on October the 12th, I believe. How's that going at the minute, and how far are you off the target that you need to reach?
With this particular petition, it's to the House of Representatives. You don't actually need a targeted number. If you're doing a citizens-initiated referendum, which is the next step, that requires 10% of the population, which is 350,000 signatures. So that would take sort of 800 volunteers, a set to find questions. So that's sort of the next step, because I'm pretty sure when these 15-odd thousand signatures get delivered, they'll go, "Oh, thank you, that's great, that's amazing," big media hype, and then on to the next day, as if it's nothing's happened. And I'm sort of used to that process with cannabis law reform, which is why I've started doing rallies which make certain people in the community uncomfortable, usually backfiring to the government, if you like. So this has got a we'll be heading up around 15. I'd like to get to 20,000, but, I'm always an optimist. So once that's delivered, that goes to like a hearing, and they have a discussion panel. But I don't know if that'll actually make any difference, because they could delay that. We've got an election next year, and so they'll be all about elections. And at the moment, we have a lot of ministers that are interested and will come down and greet us with delivering this. But no one's really that brave. Damien O'Connor from Labour government has put a members' bill in the ballot box. It hasn't been drawn out yet. But it's very much similar to this, which is simply, if your doctor approves it, then you can get access to it, rather than a Peter Dunn, which is what the petition says. So, this is sort of stage one, I guess. And then stage two, ideally, will be the referendum. And we have Helen Kelly, who would ultimately love to get the referendum underway. But, of course, she's terminally ill, and she's been denied a cannabis medicine by our government. Like, this is a woman that's worked for the trade union her whole life. She has helped the underdog, worked for equality and fairness. She is an intelligent, incredible woman with terminal cancer, asked for a cannabis medicine and has been denied. That in itself, I cannot actually believe we're in a world that can even condone that behaviour from government or anyone. So she takes it illegally. Rock on, I say. And so with her bravery, with my continuous giving away seeds and educating people on the balms that I make, and the medicinal brownie and the infused cannabis oil, coconut and cannabis oil capsules, people are realising you don't have to roll a big joint to self-medicate, so you can use it in lots of different ways. So, after this step, it will be more rallies, and I think we'll target doctors and hospitals. That would be my next. I've actually always wanted to return to them, so that's where I'll be going next, make them feel uncomfortable, remind them that this is still going on, we're not going away, and that's what it'll be. It'll be a continuous reminder of what people are asking for. We've got 73% or 75%, the latest poll, New Zealand wants medicinal cannabis. I thought we lived in a democratic world or in New Zealand, but we don't. So they can waste millions on a flag change that we never wanted in the first place, but they cannot do a cannabis law reform referendum. So we'll just make New Zealand government really uncomfortable until they have no choice. And if that means storming government eventually, well, we just have to do that. Just keep going.
Absolutely. I mean, there does seem to be so much knowledge about this plant now coming out around the world. People like yourself, people like Rick Simpson. There's so many people all over the world who are cultivating this. They're extracting the medicines and passing it on to people who need it. Unfortunately, there's some making a great deal of profit out of it and not doing it necessarily for altruistic reasons, but there are an awful lot of people out there doing it and doing it for the right reasons. And I think if we keep the pressure up, we've got to get a positive result. And by a positive result, for me, legalising cannabis is not the way to go, because as we're starting to see in America, the pharmaceutical companies are trying to take this over. And as Rick Simpson said right from when we first spoke to him, if the pharmaceutical companies get their hands on this medicine, they're going to dilute it and make it so it doesn't really work. And then they'll be able to say, see, told you, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think the most sensible is a regulated market through government, but also homegrown. I think we've lost our self-responsibility around health. I really don't get it. Like, get back in the garden. I don't care how you get back in the garden, but get back in. Grow your broccoli, grow your rosemary, grow your thyme. If you can't do outdoor growing, grow 3 indoor. And I think when people start studying the plant and looking at what is my condition, what is my body type, what is my brain type, do I need indica, do I need sativa, which strain and why, and learn about themselves and their medication. I think 3 plants, as a registered cannabis grower, the government would get a return. We register our cars, why can't we be a registered cannabis grower? Some people are really optimistic and think it should be just a free-for-all. Well, I think that's slightly nuts. I think you have to pay something in order to get some freedom around it. So, for me, I would happily pay, say, $180 annual cannabis grower registration fee, and if the old lady down the road says, I can't or I haven't got time, would you grow mine? She pays the fee, and I'm her registered grower. And then for those that have got critical or very certain health conditions, that should be funded through a government growing project with the growers we have in New Zealand that can support that. And when are we going to look after these growers that have been persecuted for how many years? 80 years. It's their time to be looked after, and it's a taxable business. It's an awesome thing. I would much prefer a cannabis shop than an alcohol shop on every corner in our suburbs. And I think, once again, lack of education around it, it could be regulated into a market, and I don't want any pharmaceutical form of cannabis. The best form that I've ever sniffed or smoked or cooked with is organic grown outdoor cannabis, and that for a New Zealand climate is perfect. But, I'll just keep being hopeful, and I'll just keep pushing, and hopefully we'll come up with something that both the politicians, the doctors, the police and the courts can all live with. And I think that's the other thing. There's so much money wasted at prohibition, and our health system as it sits is not coping. So when are they going to be mature enough to say, if a third of people chose natural medicine, our hospital systems would actually cope? The filth in the intensive care unit at Wellington Hospital was disgusting. I actually spoke to the CEO of the hospital and asked him if he could get his cleaners to clean the floor and clean the toilets. And I said, the quality of the products you're using are disgusting. So we have a health system and a mental health system that is underfunded and stressed. And if they actually took on cannabis law reform, we would have a system that could actually cope financially. So there is so much transformation that it could make. One wonders how long or how thick these politicians actually are, or are they that comfortable in their seats in Parliament with their very high wages and their lifestyles that they're just too fearful and lazy to make the changes that should have been made a long time ago.
Yeah, it strikes me that the comfort in their position is the dangerous thing there. And I think it's pretty clear to most of us that have looked in it that the pharmaceutical companies cannot afford to lose this battle, because if they lose this battle and word gets out about how effective cannabis is as medicine, then they're really pretty much finished, aren't they?
Well, they are, and evil that great, and that much power, and that much corruption, and that much money for a few families, it should well be over. It's disgusting. Greed is our biggest disease on this planet. How much money does one human being ever need? And I think that's the biggest thing. Get real. Turn off your televisions and start thinking for yourself, and stop feeding in to the material money machine. And, people think that their comfort zone lies around them, how much money they've got. If that's your run in life, then you aren't going to be very fulfilled. We don't need a lot as human beings, but we need freedom to choose. And so, I posted something the other day about pharmaceutical companies, and I said, my heart bleeds not, And as a child, I could never take that crap, because it is synthetic crap. Our body is natural, therefore we respond to natural medicine. But if someone chose chemotherapy over cannabis oil, good on you. I respect your right to choose. So that's where we're at. We just want equal rights, and that should be something we're born with. Unfortunately, it isn't something we're born with, and it takes something like what happened to Alex to make you realise how unfree we actually are. And that can't stay like that. I don't want my children or my grandchildren growing up in an unfree world. I would much rather that they were enlightened and aware of what's going on in the pharmaceutical industry.
I think that's something all of us with children and grandchildren wish for our children. As far as the medicine goes, I mean, I can see how the demonisation has worked on people, because when I talk to people about the medicine, you hear so many people, they'll give you a big long list of all the drugs that they're taking from the pharmacy, and then you say, well, actually, you could probably replace most, if not all of those, with a simple natural plant that you can grow in your own backyard or a little spare room if it's you haven't got enough room. And they say, oh, well, what's that? And you say, cannabis. And, oh, I don't take drugs. Well, what's that big long list you just gave me? And also, that big long list, you take the little leaflets out of the packaging, and there'll be a big long list of side effects, which are not really side effects, they're effects. And quite often, at the end of that list, may cause death. So, there's a bit of a clue in there somewhere.
Yeah, one of the dental nurses the other day was with Hugh's teeth. They wanted to put some film on it. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're used to me now. I think they actually think, oh, my God, it's not that woman again. So I said,
I know that feeling.
Oh, God, not that woman. I said, what's in that? And they said, what do you mean? I said, you want to put something chemical in my son's mouth. What is it? Oh, it's called that. And I said, right, tell me the list of ingredients. Well, we don't have it. And I said, well, why would you offer to put it in his mouth if you can't tell me what's in it? And they said, oh, hang on. It took ages. And finally, honestly, the list was as long as my arm of what's in it. I said, are you kidding me? You're going to put that in his natural body and it's full of shit? I said, no, sorry, you're not. And she looked stunned. And here's this young girl that's been through the dental thing. And I'm sure she, went in there with the whole, I'll make a difference to young people's teeth. But what I've noticed about the dental clinic is that if they've got fillings to do, it's almost like they're on a high, they're on a buzz. But if the teeth are perfect and fine and don't need any repair, they don't tell you. They just go next. So I actually questioned her. I said, you seem to get really buzzed out when you can get the drill out or the injection. But I said, when you haven't got any work to do, you don't even tell me that the teeth are in good condition. I said, oh, I'm quite disturbed by that. That was sort of the last thing I said. And that's what it was like with Alex. It was almost like, oh, my God, we've got someone, we're not quite sure what's wrong. We're just going to throw everything at them and hope for the best. That isn't medicine. That's sick. That's sick.
No, that is sick. We've got a comment here from Society in the chat room, and they're saying that super strong weed doesn't help. It takes the emphasis away from the medicinal angle, and they're saying they can actually remember weed where you might actually want a second one within an hour. Do you find that the super strong strains are getting to be a problem now, or?
I think that human nature, it's almost like we're obsessed. Like we can't just have one thing. We have to make it, supersize me or make it bigger or make it stronger. I think the best cannabis, as I said, is outdoor grown. I've got a very low tolerance for it. So anything strong or hydro, I can't have because, I just don't respond well on it. So I think, again, it's an individual thing. Every person I've met is top shot for humanity, and that's where pharmaceutical don't make any sense to me at all. I think look at yourself, look at your history, look at your body type, and go from there. Some people can't take cannabis. I've also experienced that a number of times in my life. People just don't have a very pleasant experience on it, and fair enough. I don't think cannabis suits everyone, but I think that's where the laziness of humanity comes in. All those years ago, doctors were seen as the ultimate. You didn't question them. And so they've been given full license to over-medicate and kill us for a long time. So no wonder we're finding our own natural solutions. But again, it's not a one-stop-fits-all. It's not a solution for health and well-being. I think our health comes from many different dimensions. I don't think it's from just, suddenly I've got cancer. I think we've got the potential to have cancer. But, is it coming from unresolved emotional problems? Is it coming from DNA? Is it coming from the environment? Is it coming from your diet? Is it coming from, all those different things? So, I think it's easy to say the weed's too strong now. Well, grow your own weed. And I think there's a vibration in weed. Sometimes I've smoked some and I've thought, God, whoever grew that was a paranoid spastic. Like I feel like a lunatic. I don't like
spastic. Yeah, I love that one.
The other weed, you think, oh my God, who grew that? They were such a cool, mellow person because I just feel really relaxed. I grew cannabis last summer, obviously, in memory of Alex because we grew it together. And so then he left me to grow it on my own, which I felt really shortchanged by. And so I grew this beautiful cannabis and it was very quite feminine. It had beautiful purple heads, and the stone was very much like my personality, slightly random, quite chilled out, but you didn't sit on your ass the whole time. After a while, you got up and carried on. It was a beautiful smoke. And so maybe that's because environmentally it was in a nice place, but I think who you are and how you project is what you're... If you're paranoid at home and you've got a grow room with 100 plants and you're freaking out, you're going to go to jail. I don't think those plants are going to be grown very nice, personally. And I think that whoever smokes them, smokes it probably, or takes it as a medicine, is probably not very lucky. So do you see what I mean? I think vibration and energy reflects in everything. And, of course, I do feng shui, so that's going to be sort of where I come from and everything. But you can find your strain. You can find your medical strain with your lower THC and your high CBD. I honestly think human beings crave CBD. I think we need that in our bodies as a dietary supplement every day. I think our young ones need it for stress and insomnia and anxiety. Our old ones need it. I think our whole nervous system is fed by it. So I think that's something we need. And I think that's why young ones go, oh, it's great being stoned, because they get a CBD hit as well. But, of course, it's so funny when you're a teenager getting stoned because, you know, you laugh a lot and do silly things or funny things. So, but I think ultimately CBD should be a dietary requirement or an access across the board. And then for the rest of it, over 18 and regulated. So I think the biggest thing is educate yourself. If you're in... Someone got hold of me yesterday and they were asking about their son and for health, because he's got health conditions. And my thing is, are you a gardener? Yes. I said, well, if you're a gardener, I'll send you seeds and you need to self-educate. And so I don't think she was quite expecting that as a response, but that's what I do now. And this year I'll grow my crop and seed it. And it's a medical crop, so I'll make sure it's a good seeded crop and I'll give it away.
And of course, if the person, from what you're saying anyway, if the person nurtures that plant, you know, with love and affection and does everything the right way, then they're going to get the result that they crave.
Exactly. And they can use the whole plant, like I said, like with your son, if you're worried, juice the leaves. There's no THC in them. It only activates if it's heated up. Save the roots, make that into balm for inflammation and ailments around the skin. I said you can use the whole plant, and by the time you get to the end of the plant, you know, you'll realise you don't need any more than 3 plants unless you've got some really chronic condition. So the plant's a gift, and we've got to re-educate and stop the fear. And I say to people, if you're going to grow, just keep reminding yourself that it's your right to grow. And I give away little cards about the law and knowing your rights. So for every packet of seeds, I give away their legal rights as well. So, and I hope that people will just feel a bit stronger.
What's the atmosphere like in New Zealand with the police? I mean, what are they actively seeking out people that are growing
Well, the last rally we did was really interesting, because the rally was that we stood beside the police. We stood for the police because they can't change the laws. They're there to enforce the laws. And it was a very peaceful protest. We approached every police station. There was 27 throughout the country that we rallied outside of and smoked. Yes, we smoked cannabis outside of most of them. And they knew what we were doing. They are not interested in personal users at all, or from what they've said in a statement, personal growers. What they're after are the gangs and the big-time growers. I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, simply because if it's medicine and we attack the growers, then we're attacking the core of the industry, which is what they want to do from a government point. They don't want anyone being able to access it, but they also don't want anyone making money out of it. So the police are sick and tired of wasted resource and time on cannabis laws that don't work. They know that. So the cops are amazing, really. I didn't have any trouble with them where I was. Nelson, Golden Bay didn't have any trouble. A lot of us sparked up joints. I publicly smoked cannabis for the first time in my life, which was quite a bold thing to do. I think everyone thought I was purely medicinal in my stand, but I'm pro-cannabis across the board. I don't care what you're using it for, actually, as long as you're being self-aware and being kind to others. I just don't think we can keep dividing the subject, because I think it's ridiculous. So the police are over it. They'd like to see a change, but of course that goes straight back to government. The police commissioner could put a full moratorium on cannabis arrests, and that's what we've pushed for, but that still hasn't happened. So yeah, I guess we'll take it any way we can get it, really, whether it be a moratorium on arrests or a national party transformation. Any which way, it's going to affect the election next year, and of course that's that next conversation. People are asking me and talking to me about which way do they vote and how strategically we vote to get rid of national, but then to have two parties in coalition that'll actually make the change.
Something you were talking about there, you were talking about people growing their own and putting the love and care into it, and that seems to be reflected in the plant. That's taken me back to a conversation I had some months ago with Rick Dwyer and Rick Simpson and our good friend Tony, who's works away furiously in the background, Raconteurs News. He put our website together and does all kinds of work behind the scenes. And Rick Simpson said, I've often wondered about this during my journey, but why me? Why this ninth grade education power engineer from the middle of nowhere? Why me? And Tony came out with a simple one-sentence answer that really took Rick aback, and he said, the plant chooses you.
Yeah.
And
the plant has an integrity that I can't explain. Funny you should say that. I was driving home. It was pre-rally or during I can't remember. And I just got an incredible feeling that this beautiful plant was in control, and she chooses who she knows will make a difference. The plant's in control. We only think we're vehicles for change, but Mother Nature and the soul of that plant is in control of this journey. And I have no doubt that the plant was here for the people, is here for the people, and the plant will have the last say. I have no doubt. I mean, you just think about it when you do, you chill out and you have a puff, all the bullshit of the world disappears, and you laugh, and then, after a while you're hungry, and then you sleep really well. And I think that's the biggest fear, is that, oh my God, we can't have a population that's chilled out, well fed and well sleeping, because then they're going to question too much. And I think that's I think the plant is a transformer. It's a spiritual plant. It's an energetic plant. It's a health plant. And I think it's probably one of the most fascinating plants in the world. And we've all been, locked up and harassed for it. No wonder men have died for the plant. And Alex would be one of the first to say, if I was going to die for anything, it would be cannabis. And, I wouldn't have ever imagined. I'm a bit like Rick Simpson. What a random life path to have. But it's still, it's not so much one of a choosing, it's chosen me. And I'm very proud to... I should show you my hat, actually, shouldn't I? My cannabis hat.
Oh, yes. Although that doesn't work terribly well on the radio. Oh, yeah.
There, you guys can see it.
Yeah.
You guys.
A beautiful black baseball cap with a great big green leaf on the front.
Oh, look. And look. What about that? There you go. That was my...
And even a tattoo on your left arm.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fabulous. What's Jason showing us now?
Hands in a bag.
I was doing that last night. Oh, God, I was laughing. I was going through, and I had all these little bags. And this is the organic outdoor stuff I was given. It's just, and if you smell it, you'd just be like, oh, that's heaven. And it is. That's my new thing now. Sniff this. We've always been a fan that sniff things, but no, that's my latest thing.
What I wanted to bring up was when you were saying earlier on that you were smoking outside the police stations, you were doing protests or you were doing demonstrations and marches, whatever, and you were smoking outside the police station. I find that my first experience of smoking in public was wow, it was the most incredible thing. I'd smoked it for a while, but I always smoked it at home. You sit at home, you have a joint, and you sat there, and there's your missus, and there's, and there's kids. Well, not your kids, obviously. We don't smoke in front of the kids, but,
No, they're in bed.
Everybody's in and out of the house, and what have you. But it's all people you're familiar with and that you know. Now, I went to Amsterdam for the first time with my mate Heath for my 40th birthday, which were about 6 years ago. In fact, it was 7 years ago because it was just before I got married, so it was in 2009. And we went over and we went into the shops, and the really weird thing, it was the first time I'd ever been in public and I'd been stoned. And I don't know if you've ever been to Amsterdam, but
no,
there are people that as you're walking around, we're having a walk round after we've been in a cafe. But there's people that come right close up to your face and say, Coke, Coke, they want to sell you cocaine. And it were really weird. It really sort of like, if I'd have been of a paranoid persuasion, it might have really freaked me out. But that's the thing that cannabis does it depends on your personality. If you're that paranoid sort of person, then that's just going to be amplified when you're stoned. So if you're a really chilled out sort of don't really care person, don't, then that's going to be amplified as well. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. That if you're a chilled out person, you're going to be even more chilled out. If you're paranoid, you're going to get paranoid.
And I think there's humour in the paranoid too. Like there's paranoid to the point of anxiety attack, which is not fun. But then there's just, you realise when you have a puff that honestly, there's nothing really to be paranoid about at all. And a little bit of paranoia is healthy, but too much paranoia is detrimental. And I think that's where it comes in with anxiety. I know the balm that I make, when I rub it on my chest, I go to sleep. Like, for what I've been through, I probably shouldn't be sleeping 8 hours a night, but I do. And I think, wow, I rub it on my feet, rub it on my forehead, incredible. So I think, again, it's that, we'll probably always have a puff and love it, but there's always those that'll be, oh no, I don't want to become a drug addict. Well, eat some brownie then and have a great sleep, or rub the balm in, or take it. Rallies are a public thing that people are invited to, so they've build confidence. But I don't tend to try and educate people that don't want to listen. I'd prefer it if people come to me and I'll educate, and then I believe they'll go out and educate others, and that's the ultimate way to go with it, I think. But I think we have a big job in front of us, because the laws will change, and when they change, we'll have to be pretty well organised as a network and worldwide to get this education across the board to our young ones, because our young ones need to know that it's medicine, and therefore as a medicine it needs a certain amount of respect. I mean, look at the American Indians. They've always smoked a peace pipe and hung out. Amazing Indigenous culture, and most cultures from an Indigenous point have worked with cannabis at some point, whether spiritual or medically. So it's a no-brainer. As a lawyer here in Nelson said, for 10,000 years it was used throughout the world as a medicine, and it's only been the last 100 years prohibition. Tells you everything. I'm just claiming back. I'm going backwards. I'm wiping out the last 100 years. I'm going back to the way it was. Let's re-legalise our basic right.
I think that's what we all need to do, Rose. Okay, we've got just about to the end of the first hour, and we normally play a tune so that we can get a quick refreshment break before we carry on for the second hour.
Can I just say something, Andy? I'd just like to reply to something that's been posted in the chat room. Freeman Jack has put, do not hide adult behaviour from children. If you cannot justify doing it to your 5-year-old, do not do it at all, which I completely agree with. I was just saying that I wouldn't be smoking in the same room as a child, simply because the smoke would be harmful to them, and also I don't really think that they should, it's up to them if they want to get, when they get old enough to be able to make those decisions, because it would affect them as well. So that's what I was saying. I never have hidden anything from my kids. I've always told them what I do, and I've always told them why I do it and why I think it's okay.
Well, my children call it the medicine, and we're very open about it. So it's across the board. And I'm with you. I don't think they need to be around a smoking environment, but they see me with the medicine. They know that it's medicine, and I educate my children. They know all about it. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
We've got another hour to go yet, Rose.
Oh, what?
Okay, we'll just put on a song now, and we'll be back in just under 5 minutes. And welcome back to Raconteurs News this Tuesday evening, 27th of September. And before we know it, it's going to be Christmas, isn't it, Jason?
Well, I saw a thing on Facebook today, you know, one of them silly things that comes up on Facebook around about this time of year every year that warns us that there's only 12 more Monday mornings until Christmas Day.
Oh, lovely.
So that's nice, isn't it? 12 more Monday mornings.
Yeah, but only 13 more, and then it'll be nearly a year away, won't it?
But it'll be our anniversary as well, won't it? So,
oh, of course, yeah. The anniversary of Raconteurs News coming up. That's flown by as well, hasn't it?
It has. We've done plenty of shows, and it's been a pretty good ride. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Up to now, but there's still plenty in front of us as well.
Well, that's it. I mean, it only seems like a few weeks ago we started doing this as Raconteurs News, and suddenly look at the player and we're on show number 83. How did that happen?
I really don't know. But it's not half been a good ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm just looking to see if we've got Rose back yet. No, Rose is still making a cuppa, so...
right, making a little bit of a cuppa, are we? We had a lovely brief chat with her young lad, Leo, while the record was on. He's just got up this morning. Obviously, he's going to be on his way to school in a bit, I would imagine.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting messages about how another success with the medicine. Someone who was supposedly terminally ill has now back to driving their car.
I'm back.
Hiya, Rose. Welcome back.
Hey, Rose.
Cheers.
Yeah, we had a good old chat with Leo. Well, the music was on there.
Awesome. Yeah, he was very interested.
He was telling me he's been on TV and in the newspapers, which I haven't. Jason's the famous one out of us two.
Infamous is the word. I think you'll find.
Yeah, I'm probably really similar, actually, there, Jason. The media's been quite kind to me in New Zealand. I often have a bit of a giggle. Alex, as well as lots of other beautiful qualities, he had a very dark, sick humour. And I've often said that the media has been kind because I have an empathetic past, because I'm mother of a son who died, and say that with a bit of tongue-in-cheek, because that was what he was like, really. And so that, because people have said, how come they haven't come and arrested you? And I was like, well, what a bizarre reality. Why, you know, I'm not a dealer. I'm not a big grower. Like anything I grow is, you know, it's pretty small. I'm an educator and I'm an activist, but I'm not really I'm actually not a lawbreaker at all. I'm very much a law-abiding, peaceful person, but this one law hurts communities. So
yeah, absolutely. You're like our friend Susie who lives out in Spain. You're a healer, not a dealer.
Yeah, very much so. I am a healer, not a dealer. And obviously you get the cheeky ones that'll come up to you or message you and say, and I just say, I make balms. You can't get high on my balms. Like, I think you've got the wrong person. I love the cheek of human nature, but at the same time, it's like, well, you know, really, God loves a trier. Alex had a T-shirt that had Jesus on it, and it said, "Everyone look busy, Jesus is coming," and that was Alex of humanity, in lots of ways. You know, maybe we should send that to government, a T-shirt like that. They might actually do something, because it's almost like an integrity issue, isn't it? You know, we'll pretend we're busy until we're being watched. Well, really?
Well, I've got a T-shirt that I do like to wear, but I need to be a bit careful about when and where I wear it, because some people take exception to it. And it's just the National Health Service logo, big across your chest, and it says NHS killing people since 1948. Some people take...
Can I have one?
Yeah, I think you get them off eBay.
Right. Thank you. Mine's got to be DHB though, doesn't it? District Health Board. I think I'm probably their worst nightmare, but I'll have great delight in returning, because it's sort of interesting. Where do we go next? Who do we make uncomfortable next that then gets hold of their local MP? And everyone says, "I'll just get hold of the MPs." Well, it's pretty obvious that they're comfortable. So if we go to someone, and I think the doctors and the hospitals, and the next step, make them uncomfortable, and then they can go on and make their friends uncomfortable. When you've got grey power on your side, and not all of the branches are, but there's certainly some very pro-grey power members that want to grow it next to their broccoli, and you've got the Freemasons, they certainly deserve it. For all those years, we've got an ageing population, and, a third of those elderly won't be able to take opiates, so they should have a choice. I mean, how disrespectful to our elderly are we going to be? Are we going to continue to lock them up in those hideous old people's homes and feed them opiates? That's wrong. That's morally wrong, and that's not everyone's way. And you've got to give them an option. So there's so many areas in society that this is affecting, and I think people just get really comfortable. Oh, if it doesn't affect me, I don't want to know. Well, you have a responsibility as a human being on the planet to make it a better place. Every single one of us. That's not just for you or me. That's for every single one of us. And isn't that what we're meant to be teaching our children? To be kind to others and to make a difference. And I think that's what cannabis law reform is all about.
I think we absolutely need that. And, yeah, I mean, it seems to be the same old story right across the board, whether you're talking about 9/11 or chemtrails or global warming or whatever you want to talk about. No one wants to acknowledge that this stuff is real until it comes knocking on their door. And it seems that when cancer or some terminal condition comes knocking on the door, then you better take notice. And one thing that I found quite encouraging, we spoke about yesterday, last time I spoke to Rick Dwyer, he said everyone in their area of Nova Scotia now knows that this medicine is effective. It works. It cures people. Oh, sorry, you're not allowed to say cure, are you? That's the C word. It makes people better. But he's noticed a lot of people growing their own who you would least expect to. And he's talking about people in their 70s and 80s are actually starting growing their own cannabis now, which I find is absolutely amazing.
Well, that's what the Freemasons, I took a bag full of little seeds, so, 3 or 4 seeds, didn't want to freak them out. And everyone, and one of the main questions is, well, I'd love to grow it, but how do you get the seeds? And unless you're associated in the world of cannabis, how the hell are you meant to get the seeds? And now I make sure that I have little bags of seeds on me all the time. If people talk to me and ask me, then I gift them seeds. And I think ultimately that's what it needs to be. Can you imagine the joy of having local cannabis clubs? And there's no money involved, so the gangs wouldn't be interested in us. So we could all gather together. I'd have my brownie and my balm, and people will have seeds, and some will have different strains. Do you want to swap? Oh, I tried this for that, and it was really good. And being able to come together, have old people come down with a dozen eggs so they could get 6 bits of brownie for their week's sleep, or dark chocolate. Like, what a collective of giving and caring and sharing and education. And that's what needs to happen. We shouldn't need disasters like earthquakes that Christchurch have. We've got a whole city down there of post-traumatic stress disorder. Cannabis now is pretty mainstream. And how cool is that they're finding that cannabis actually enables them to sleep and relax and have a giggle after the trauma that they've been through, and yet the government aren't allowing it. Here, take an antidepressant, side effects being suicide. Great stuff. Like, honestly, I just can't begin to imagine why any doctor, they take an oath. What's the oath? First do no harm. Well, yeah, first do no harm. Jesus, have they forgotten what they signed up for? And it's our job to remind them what they signed up for. They are healers, they're not profiters, and that's what they're doing. They're profiting those people at the top with their pharmaceutical drugs. But if someone chose to go that journey, that's their choice, and I fully respect it. But I think they need to also flip the coin and respect our choice, which is a natural medicine. And I think it's very simple. They love to complicate it.
Have you had any results, or any stories of people that you've given seeds to or given advice to, and where they've come back to you and said, look, this has happened and this has happened and this is, some anecdotal sort of evidence of what's been going on in your work? Yeah, story.
Definitely. Probably the best one is when I first started making the balms. It was really bizarre, putting the coconut oil in and the roots, and I felt like I was sort of a witch in ancient times because I was putting comfrey and different herbs from the garden that are medicinal in it for skin and healing. And they're lovely little bottles of jars, and I had a friend's husband who was diagnosed as having a melanoma, a skin cancer on his nose, and they wanted to remove it and probably half his nose. And I said, oh, that's really radical. Why don't you try the cannabis balm for 6 weeks and then talk about that radical step? Well, he did. It's gone. The specialist was completely blown away here in Nelson and asked what he'd been using, and he said cannabis balm. And she said, well, whatever you're using, it's worked. You don't need an operation. I saw him on the weekend. There's a little dent in his nose where it was, but it's healed. So that's probably, and I've got before and after photos, that's probably the best one. But I can't really keep up with making my balms. I've just got another one put together now. COPD for breathing anxiety and lung expansion. That's huge. Like, you can rub it straight into your chest. So anyone that buys the balm buys it again. And so people say, oh, she's making money out of it. No, I'm usually making enough money to buy the next lot of coconut oil to start the next lot. So, I'm certainly not going to get wealthy, but I've certainly got a really busy job to do. People with a kidney function, right down at we need the transplant, she's transferred to cannabis only as medicine. In the last 3 months, her blood tests and her kidney function have improved every month. So she's off all pharmaceutical drugs. So there's so many stories like that. And also I think with cannabis, it may not cure if it's chronic and not caught early enough, but it gives a quality of life and a pain relief and a connection with your loved ones, and that is priceless. And I guess I don't like the cure word because we don't actually know. Cures can come in lots of different forms. But if the person who is dying feels connected through that process and not out of it on morphine, then that in itself is a reason enough to choose it. So those stories don't stop. Yes, it makes a difference. And so at night, when that's aching, I can rub my balm in and the aching goes away. So for inflammation and any skin psoriasis, up and rubbing it on the third eye and the temples gets rid of headaches and tension. So there's so many stories. And if it was all just in our heads, then I'm sure those that have got the balm wouldn't get it again. And I think, and people say, oh, it's all in your head. Well, no, it isn't actually, because you have to try it to benefit from it. So, yeah, stories, and I don't think they'll stop those stories. They're just going to continue. Children that are on a very low dose of CBD rubbed in their feet with epilepsy, they notice a difference. So, yeah. And the balms, from what I can have learned through the law, because it's a beauty product, it's within the law here in New Zealand. So, yeah, it's an interesting one.
And your balm that you make, is that pretty much entirely CBD, or is there much THC content in there?
Well, I don't believe, it gets heated, so if there was any THC in it, it's going to be activated through the process of heating the coconut oil. But no, it's CBD, like the roots have CBD. They're not known to have THC in it. I've not had it tested at a laboratory for it. I've got a little tester kit here I can test my brownies with, but I don't need to test them. I know that they're quite strong. Yeah, so I don't know. All I know is that people love it, from old people, retired people, to muscle aches and injuries right across the board. So, yeah, there's no sort of any one person. And I give out little sample jars. So I usually give away half of what I make anyway, just to get people to trial it. And, of course, then I say, well, if you grow your 3 plants yourself, save your roots, and you've got a year's worth of your balm. So, and such an easy thing to make.
Mm. Yeah, something I came across, the CBD side of it, not that long ago, only this year really, and I'd kind of heard that perhaps CBD wasn't as effective as the full spectrum THC medication, but because it's quite easy to get hold of in this country, I ordered some off the internet, tried it, and as I was trying different brands, I found that the results were very, very different. And I thought, doesn't seem to be consistent. Something you get that you're told is 10% CBD doesn't seem to work as well as something that's supposed to be 4%. And so a friend and I got together. It's actually Kevin who introduced us to you. And we decided to import some hemp from Europe and have a go at making it ourselves. And we made it what we worked out to be roughly 2% CBD, and it seemed to work way better than the stuff I'd been buying that was 10%. So it's about a quarter of the price of what we were paying for it online, and from my experience, works better. We're also making the balm with coconut oil and beeswax. That's a bit long and drawn out, to 7 hours in the slow cooker to make that. But the results we're getting are really encouraging. I've sent it all over the country. I've sent some to Canada, some to Spain, and people having even beneficial effects with their dogs. Kevin's dog had a heart murmur, which it doesn't have anymore, and it's not taking the meds. And our friend Susie, who lives out in Spain, her dog doesn't like being stoned, so we sent her some CBD oil to try. And her little dog, Coco, he's running about all over the place, whereas previously he was having a job to get up the stairs.
Yeah, well, of course, we had somebody on from Pet Relief, which is a company in America that produces CBD products for pets. So we've had him on. He's on one of our shows. What was his name, Andy?
Steve Smith.
Steve Smith. Well, it's a fairly uncommon name, so it shouldn't get too many results on Google. But it's Pet Relief, isn't it, that he's from?
Yeah, RELEAF.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, well, these some of these clients that buy the balm, they ask about their animals because they love their animals, and they're using it. And I notice our dog Patch, he'll lick the balm, so he likes it. He doesn't think, ooh, I don't want that near me. So he actually likes it, and it works for animals as well as it does. Of course, they're allowed to have it. CBD is allowed. Any hemp foods here in New Zealand are for animal only. So you can actually get your hemp foods here and take it on the sly, but you're not allowed to consume it yourself. And I think anything that becomes industrial, I question. I come back. I think it has to be holistic. It has to be individually driven. And here to grow hemp, you have to apply to the government and have no criminal convictions and all that sort of crap. But if we were able to grow 3 hemp plants for CBD and 3 cannabis plants for the mix, then I think we've got our medicine cabinet right there. But of course, the government are trying to figure out how they can make money out of all of us at the same time. And as I've said right along, there shouldn't be a huge amount of profit in health. It shouldn't be a conversation about money. Our health is something that is shouldn't involve huge amounts of profit, and I think that's why the cannabis plant has come back into humanity, is to make a change, because you shouldn't be selling something for hundreds of dollars when you can grow it in your backyard, and if you can't grow it, then it should be regulated in a system where government can grow it and cover their costs and make some money to go back into education or roading or policing or whatever needs it. There's so many areas that need it. But as far as these huge pharmaceutical companies, their time is rapidly coming to an end.
I do
One
hope
world
so.
order. One world order.
Yes, yeah, we've got wise to that one. We can head them off at the pass before they get there. It does seem that the whole movement seems to be gathering pace very quickly. I mean, it was something I'd only kind of looked at on the fringes up until about a year ago, but I'm just seeing it everywhere I look now.
Yeah, it is everywhere. I know since Alex's story, it's been interested. It just seems that the politicians are the ones that aren't, and you do question your democratic system and how you vote. I'm really keen to get a whole heap of young ones voting this time, 18 and above. Alex and I voted together for the first time in the last election, and we voted for the Aotearoa Legalised Cannabis Party together, and we thought that was a great joke. There was no way we were going to give our vote to two parties that weren't going to make a change. So we gave it to a party that at least that they were their word and their stand. This election will be a bit different. We'll have to look at Green Party. New Zealand's the only one with a cannabis policy, and I think they could probably work with Labour. Labour's the only one who seems to have the balls to stand up and say change must be made. So I think getting the young ones educated, getting them enrolled and getting some voting so we get a change. But yeah, once again, it's education, and it's about being approachable on the subject, and yeah, just keep talking about it, offering talks and education in our secondary school system. Our teenagers need to know the value of it as a medicine.
Well, we're both. When you're speaking to me and Andy, you're preaching to the converted. I use CBD oil every day. I also use the balm that Andy made. And what I find the biggest, from what I can understand, from from my physical symptoms, the biggest improvement with me is that I'm asthmatic as well, but I smoke a joint every night. Now, I used to wake up in the morning and cough up, half a lung, and now I don't even do that. I don't do that at all. Sometimes I might cough a little bit up, but nothing like before. And it's the CBD oil, because we started the inclined bed therapy as well, particularly just before, and the inclined bed therapy helped with it, but it was still there. And the CBD oils just seems to have eliminated it. To me, it just seems that anybody with a respiratory ailment is only going to benefit from this. Just a bit of CBD oil, just 3 drops under my tongue in the morning and at night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that balm's incredible on the chest. Any asthmatics or anyone who's struggling to get a deep breath, if they find if they use their balm, their oxygen rate actually increases. And so whatever the CBD does to the central nervous system and the ability to relax and breathe naturally, it feeds it. And I think that's where people need to look at the plant. The plant has a tap root and then the huge small roots, and it mirrors our spine and our nervous system. So as a plant, it is designed for humanity. It is designed to feed the human body and its nervous system. With that taproot, and it's, you only need to look at it when it comes out of the ground. What a fascinating plant, and it mirrors humanity. So that's why I know that it's a plant that is speaking to us to learn about it and to study it. And I guess it that first step, I'd had some, I guess the Rick Simpson oil, it came from Hawaii. It's a medicinal oil. I put a pinprick under my tongue before I went to sleep. I had the most amazing sleep, and the next day I just felt really relaxed, not stoned at all, just really relaxed. And from that one experience of that really strong oil, I knew that, they're on a winning recipe here. I haven't actually made that yet because the whole process, and Kevin's trying to encourage me to make it, but I just haven't taken that step. But I know that's what families are wanting and that's what they're asking for. But of course, we had in the news the other day here, there's been I don't know how many fires because of explosions because of that. And I think, not a lot of responsibility is being taken by the law enforcers around that. They're not all making oil to get stoned. Actually, they're making oil because families are wanting it for chronic and terminal conditions. So that, they're not all bakehouses. Once again, everyone gets lumped into the same sort of category. And if they looked further at that, they might see more and realise that there's pretty normal families, professional families, that are requesting the top end of the market. And until there's a government system in place, humans will just do their own thing and take the law into their own hands.
You mentioned there about the explosions. I was very fortunate. In the first time I did a CBD extraction, I had a fireman on hand because that's what Kev used to do before he was invalided out. So, but really, the safety side of doing the extraction, particularly with the alcohol, I can't remember the name. Isopropyl, that's it. Sorry. The safety procedures are so straightforward because all you need to do is either do it outside, or if that's not an option, to make sure the room's well ventilated and you don't switch any electrical devices on or off whilst you're doing it. Apart from that, you can't really go wrong. So
I guess it's once again prohibition. Can you imagine families outside in the barbecue area with their rice cooker going with their isopropyl? I don't know how many hours it takes. Doesn't take that long. But I guess it's just that Kiwi thing that, oh my God, imagine if the neighbour looks over and I've got my rice cooker going to create my CBD oil, and it's just it's that fear that next minute we're going to get Plod the policeman coming around and you're done for a Class B drug, and that's what stops people. And I think that's just so cruel that we've got people that are dying from cancer and they need that oil. You can make your tinctures, you can make your balms, but until you get that top quality organic outdoor grown head of the cannabis plant and wash it in the isopropyl, and then the 2 washes or 3, and then break it down. And if you've never done anything like that before and you didn't excel in science like I did, I was a bit of a delinquent in the science class, didn't really listen. So people don't tend to be brave enough to take that on. They want someone else to do it, and ultimately you put it into someone else's hands. And it keeps coming, for me, it keeps coming back to take responsibility, grow your own plants, watch the Rick Simpson DVD. It is easy. And just to be brave enough to do that. And maybe in the summer and the season when there's lots of heads around that I've grown, that I'll be able to do that myself. But it's the gold end of the medicine. But I believe that it's what we need in our health system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the realisation of what this medicine can do is truly stunning. It's really opened my eyes to things. I'm someone who fell off a house 35 years ago or so, and I crushed my spine. So I've been taking a shed load of morphine for at least the last 10 years. And for anyone who's not took morphine on a long-term basis, a high dose of morphine for 10 years doesn't do your internals any good. And I actually went to the pain clinic, the last visit to a medical doctor I had, and he said to me, "You've been on morphine for 10 years. That's not terribly good for you." And I actually said to him, "No shit, Sherlock."
You don't say.
And I said, "Well, what's the chance of getting on a cannabis trial then?" Oh, no, nothing like that. Can't do anything like that. Oh, no, it's not proven, blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. So I said, well, what can you do for me? Well, you can have an operation that'll be very risky, or just go away and deal with it. And that's where I was left. I'm now at the position where I no longer take any pharmaceutical medications, and everything I take that I put in my body is natural. And awesome. I feel a lot better for it, I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think, you made a statement earlier that people have got their 15 or 20 pharmaceutical drugs lined up that they take every day, and then you suggest that actually you could replace 3/4, if not all of those, with taking cannabis, and they go, oh, but I don't agree with drugs. Well, I'm not quite sure what you think you might be on. We talk about drugs. We've got alcohol in our society that's accepted. It sponsors our sports teams. We've got politicians that own shares in alcohol companies. And that is 118 times more harmful to the human body than cannabis will ever be. And, you can't kill yourself on cannabis. I mean, I think people have tried. What is the running joke? You roll 100 joints, you get to the end of the third one, you forget what you were meant to be doing because you're so chilled out, you get vilely hungry, and then you fall asleep. I mean, if that's the side effects of cannabis, I think society versus alcohol would be so much. I mean, look at Jason, he gets naked. We know that it changes us. I stopped drinking when I became a mum at 21, simply because I was a bit of a hothead when I drank, and I thought, well, God, that's not really who I am, and I've never really drunk since, and just lucky to be involved in different communities that have used cannabis. And so for me, it's like, if you go to any party where there's cannabis around, it's usually the funniest, most relaxed environment. A huge amount of food gets eaten. People are open. And there's a spiritual side of cannabis that people don't seem to realise, is that it opens your mind and you let go of the conditioning. So imagine if we regulated cannabis across the world. We may stop the warring that's going on. Because at the moment we have a society filled with greed, control, and war, and so the way things are at the moment, it doesn't take a lot of thinking to make us realise that we're going wrong somewhere. And prohibition of alcohol never worked, so prohibition of drugs doesn't work. Humans will do what they choose to do, and if it's an educated, regulated system, much more sensible, a lot safer, and a lot more enjoyable.
And prohibition of plants certainly doesn't work.
How far? Like, it's, I look in the garden here, and there's poppies that'll grow, and you can do things with poppies. I believe you can bleed them and get out of it on that.
Opiates.
They're not prohibited. Everyone can grow poppies. But you're not allowed to grow cannabis. I mean, and I think, that's that whole thing. Again, is it fear, is it ignorance, or is it greed? I still don't know. I'm sure the cannabis plant will have the last say, regardless, in this whole story. And we'll all be a part of history changing. But I think, we just got to push the politicians, or educate the politicians, to change.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you had a large enough field with poppies in, you could actually get the American military to come and guard it for you. Because that's what they do. They're going to come in and they're going to guard it for you and everything, and they're going to make sure that. It reminds me of they'll guard it for you, but then they'll also harvest it for you as well and take it away and do their own thing. It's like, it reminds me of a thing that I saw on I think it was a Viz top tip or something, but what it said was, teach your kids how government works by taking all the sweets off them and telling them to fuck off.
yeah, pretty much. That's exactly where it's at. And I think to try and meet them halfway. We'll be happy to be registered cannabis growers. But people say, I don't have to pay to grow my broccoli, so why should I have to pay to grow my cannabis? And I say, well, hopefully it'll do more good than harm, that if they regulate it and we're a cannabis grower and we pay our little registration fee, we'll have a little certificate. We get Department of Conservation here in New Zealand going around every property in New Zealand checking for white butterfly. So the system's already in place. They can just add cannabis grower to their little list, and they're fully trained with plants and what they are, so they could also go, oh yes, are you a registered cannabis grower? I see you've got 6, you're only allowed 3, can you remove 3 in front of me now, choose which ones they are, and off they go to the next property. Because at the moment, these Department of Conservation people just walk into your property and sift around. And I just find that absolutely disgusting. And as I said to one of them last season when they came to the property I was at, do I go into your backyard without knocking on your door? I said, I think you'd find that quite freakish. So I said, I don't appreciate you doing it with me. And actually, I'll stop growing brassicas just so you don't come round, you bunch of weirdos. And now just got a job. But how strange is that? Like people coming in with their clipboard looking in your garden. What a load of crap. You know, and you can't tell me they're not spies for the government looking in our garden, looking for cannabis. No wonder everyone's gone indoors to grow their weed. Mm-hmm. And now they can regulate the power through the power meters. And if the power goes up, you know, then they go, oh, I wonder if they've got a home grow. Really, at every corner, they try and nail it up. Unbelievable.
Yeah, over here, some of the police forces have actually been using helicopters with heat-seeking cameras to identify indoor growers. I
thought about having a campaign of heat your shed, so everybody heats their shed, right? Everybody heats their shed, and then there's just everybody's shed is just shows up on the heat generator, and then the ones that are growing it, which, let's face it, they're doing a service, aren't they? They're going to get away.
Without them, we need them. Oh, apparently, just get a drone and have a drone circling around, and that keeps away the helicopters. But you know, the money in that alone. Actually, we thought we'd get a whole heap of, try and get a massive seed bank and hire a private helicopter and get them to throw seeds all over New Zealand. But the only trouble with that is you get a whole heap of seeded crop, and we won't get the quality of heads. So it's a really difficult one to know which is the best way to go. But I think, you know, promoting, carry seeds, give them away, and just get people to take responsibility and learn about this plant that has had such a hard time for so long. It's just it's the closest thing to insanity that there is, I think, currently on the planet, next to the warring and the greed.
Talking about insanity, you were mentioning the spiritual aspect of when you get a group of people smoking cannabis together. And Luby Lou, my wise woman, has just posted in the chat room, oh, I don't know, I'd kill for the last square of chocolate when I get the munchies.
Isn't it obscene, that part? It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, and Dr. Rock's saying he wished that his folks had rubbed CBD into his feet when he was younger. It would have calmed him down nicely.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a connection with smokers that you can talk, and sometimes you talk complete rubbish, but, you know, that's a good thing. I think we can be far too serious as a race. And what I love about cannabis, it just gets you to stop the conforming stress of keeping up. And the cannabis just puts you back to your centre. It reminds you of what's important to you, what you value. And I think that's where the gold is that if people can realise if they have 1 or 2 puffs in a controlled environment, that they will realise how beneficial and spiritually connected you feel when you have a puff of cannabis. That may not be for every single person on the planet, but from anyone that I've spoken to, there's a sense of connectedness and community and understanding. And there's an empathy that cannabis brings into a person's being. You can get a really aggressive person that can have a puff on cannabis and you see his true colours. You see their softness and you see their true nature. And, you know, we need a lot more of that in our community. I think of the domestic violence that we have here in New Zealand and the child abuse. And I think, wow, if we had a bunch of stoners versus a bunch of alcoholics, that could create such a change in our community for our young ones. And I don't mean stoners as in that's all you do, but if you use it, instead of having that drink at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, you have a puff. I tell you right now, you'd be out in the garden gardening, you'd be kicking the ball with your kids, you'd be playing some crazy card game and being a kid. That's the gold of cannabis, rather than to take yourself out with alcohol and numb yourself. Cannabis reconnects you with nature, reconnects you with who you are, and reconnects you with your children and how to be a child again in a society that is hell-bent on getting us to work 24/7, pay taxes and die young on pharmaceuticals. So cannabis takes us right away from that conformity of society and gives us that childlike humour back. Can you imagine being in an old person's home and everyone has half a bit of brownie with their cup of tea at 8:30 at night? That would be hilarious, absolutely hilarious. All sorts of mischief could happen. And why? I mean, look at Jason, he gets naked. We know that it changes us. I stopped drinking when I became a mum at 21, simply because I was a bit of a hothead when I drank. And I thought, well, God, that's not really who I am, and I've never really drunk since. And just lucky to be involved in different communities that have used cannabis. And so for me, it's like, if you go to any party where there's cannabis around, it's usually the funniest, most relaxed environment. A huge amount of food gets eaten. People are open. And there's a spiritual side of cannabis that people don't seem to realise, is that it opens your mind, and you let go of the conditioning. So imagine if we regulated cannabis across the world. We may stop the warring that's going on, because at the moment we have a society filled with greed, control and war. And so the way things are at the moment, it doesn't take a lot of thinking to make us realise that we're going wrong somewhere. Prohibition of alcohol never worked, so prohibition of drugs doesn't work. Humans will do what they choose to do, and if it's an educated, regulated system, much more sensible, a lot safer, and a lot more enjoyable.
And prohibition of plants certainly doesn't work.
How far? Like, it's, I look in the garden here and there's poppies that'll grow, and, you can do things with poppies, I believe. You can bleed them and, get out of it on that.
Opiates.
They're not prohibited. Everyone can grow poppies, but you're not allowed to grow cannabis. I mean, and I think, that's that whole thing. Again, is it fear, is it ignorance, or is it greed? I still don't know. I'm sure the cannabis plant will have the last say, regardless, in this whole story, and we'll all be a part of history changing. But I think, we just got to push the politicians or educate the politicians to change.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you had a large enough field with poppies in, you could actually get the American military to come and guard it for you. Because that's what they do. They're going to come in and they're going to guard it for you and everything, and they're going to make sure that. It reminds me of they'll guard it for you, but then they'll also harvest it for you as well and take it away and do their own thing. It's like, it reminds me of a thing that I saw on I think it was a Viz top tip or something, but what it said was, teach your kids how government works by taking all the sweets off them and telling them to fuck off.
yeah, pretty much. That's exactly where it's at. And I think to try and meet them halfway. We'd be happy to be registered cannabis growers. But people say, I don't have to pay to grow my broccoli, so why should I have to pay to grow my cannabis? And I say, well, hopefully it'll do more good than harm, that if they regulate it and we're a cannabis grower and we pay our little registration fee, we'll have a little certificate. We get Department of Conservation here in New Zealand going around every property in New Zealand checking for white butterfly. So the system's already in place. They can just add cannabis grower to their little list, and they're fully trained with plants and what they are, so they could also go, oh yes, are you a registered cannabis grower? I see you've got 6, you're only allowed 3, can you remove 3 in front of me now, choose which ones they are, and off they go to the next property. Because at the moment these Department of Conservation, people just walk into your property and sift around. And I just find that absolutely disgusting. And as I said to one of them last season when they came to the property I was at, do I go into your backyard without knocking on your door? I said, I think you'd find that quite freakish. So I said, I don't appreciate you doing it with me. And actually, I'll stop growing brassicas just so you don't come round, you bunch of weirdos. And now just got a job. But how strange is that? Like people coming in with their clipboard looking in your garden. What a load of crap. You know, and you can't tell me they're not spies for the government looking in our garden, looking for cannabis. No wonder everyone's gone indoors to grow their weed. Mm-hmm. And now they can regulate the power through the power meters. And if the power goes up, you know, then they go, oh, I wonder if they've got a home grow. Really, at every corner, they try and nail it up. Unbelievable.
Yeah, over here, some of the police forces have actually been using helicopters with heat-seeking cameras to identify indoor growers. I
thought about having a campaign of heat your shed, so everybody heats their shed, right? Everybody heats their shed, and then there's just everybody's shed is just shows up on the heat generator, and then the ones that are growing it, which, let's face it, they're doing a service, aren't they? They're going to get away.
Without them, we need them. Oh, apparently, just get a drone and have a drone circling around, and that keeps away the helicopters. But, you know, the money in that alone. Actually, we thought we'd get a whole heap of, try and get a massive seed bank and hire a private helicopter and get them to throw seeds all over New Zealand. But the only trouble with that is you get a whole heap of seeded crop and we won't get the quality of heads. So it's a really difficult one to know which is the best way to go. But I think, you know, promoting, carry seeds, give them away, and just get people to take responsibility and learn about this plant that has had such a hard time for so long. It's just it's the closest thing to insanity that there is, I think, currently on the planet, next to the warring and the greed.
Talking about insanity, you were mentioning the spiritual aspect of when you get a group of people smoking cannabis together. And Luby Lou, my wise woman, has just posted in the chat room, oh, I don't know, I'd kill for the last square of chocolate when I get the munchies.
Isn't it obscene, that part? It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, and Dr. Rock's saying he wished that his folks had rubbed CBD into his feet when he was younger. It would have calmed him down nicely.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a connection with smokers that you can talk, and sometimes you talk complete rubbish, but, you know, that's a good thing. I think we can be far too serious as a race. And what I love about cannabis, it just gets you to stop the conforming stress of keeping up. And cannabis just gets you back to your centre. It reminds you of what's important to you, what you value. And I think that's where the gold is that if people can realise if they have one or two puffs in a controlled environment, that they will realise how beneficial and spiritually connected you feel when you have a puff of cannabis. That may not be for every single person on the planet, but from anyone that I've spoken to, there's a sense of connectedness and community and understanding. And there's an empathy that cannabis brings into a person's being. You can get a really aggressive person that can have a puff on cannabis and you see his true colours, you see their softness, and you see their true nature. And, you know, we need a lot more of that in our community. I think of the domestic violence that we have here in New Zealand and the child abuse, and I think, wow, if we had a bunch of stoners versus a bunch of alcoholics, that could create such a change in our community for our young ones. And I don't mean stoners as in that's all you do, but if you use it, instead of having that drink at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, you have a puff. I tell you right now, you'd be out in the garden, gardening, you'd be kicking the ball with your kids, you'd be playing some crazy card game and being a kid. That's the gold of cannabis, rather than to take yourself out with alcohol and numb yourself. Cannabis reconnects you with nature, reconnects you with who you are, and reconnects you with your children and how to be a child again in a society that is hell-bent on getting us to work 24/7, pay taxes, and die young on pharmaceuticals. So cannabis takes us right away from that conformity of society and gives us that childlike humour back. Can you imagine being in an old person's home and everyone has half a bit of brownie with their cup of tea at 8:30 at night? That would be hilarious, absolutely hilarious. All sorts of mischief could happen, and what a great way to go, rather than to sit there like a zombie, whacked out on opiates.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned about the competitive aspect of it. I mean, alcohol it seems to have a competitive culture around it. You know, I can drink more than you can. Oh, you've only had 2 drinks, have another one. You don't tend to get that with cannabis. Nobody's saying, well, you've only had 1 joint. Here, have another one. You need another one. You know.
It brings out the worst in humanity, alcohol. As I say, we are born with an intuition or a sixth sense that can't be seen or explained, but we have it. And as soon as you go past that 3rd drink, that is gone. So that's why young ones get in cars and drive too fast, or why you shag someone you wouldn't normally have a conversation with. You lose your natural inhibition. I tell you now, when you're stoned, the last thing you want to do is drive anywhere. Actually, you get the pizza delivered. And as far as connecting with someone you wouldn't normally connect with, it does the opposite. You find like-minded people. So alcohol, it's a negative, competitive, aggressive drug that destroys lives and brings out the worst in people. And for those that go, and you know, there's the other thing, you know, don't have 3 or 4 drinks and try your first toke on cannabis. You just end up probably puking, because the two don't go well together at all. I think if you have a puff and then have a drink, that's a much better way to go, and you'll find that you're not interested in drinking a hell of a lot more after that. And I think, again, that's education. Don't get on the piss and get all brave and then have a toke on a joint. You'll go green, you'll probably hang on to a tree outside somewhere and do the big chunder run. Education, make sure you're with people that are used to it and understand it. But I know if we swapped it tomorrow, and for every box of beer that you could have 2 or 3 joints and go home, there'd be a huge amount of connectedness. How well rugby would go as our national game, I'm unsure. I mean, my sons play rugby. I come from a rugby family, and I understand men need that sense of team and connectedness, but alcohol is deeply entwined in that, and I think that's a really negative message to our young ones. Alex couldn't really drink, hated it, didn't like the feeling of it, so he was very, very private. He would come home after his game, he'd sit and have his one stubby, and him and I would have a smoke, and he'd talk about the game. And that's who we were. Never did I think it would be a public subject. But from where I can see it, he was the new rugby player. He wasn't into drinking and aggression. He was into the game itself and this team spirit, but how he chose to relax was with cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What a way to do it, yeah. It is absolutely fabulous to hear from you, Rose, and we're coming to the end of the 2 hours now, so I wonder if you could possibly give a shout out to any links that you've got where listeners will be able to find your petitions and your work online. We'll obviously put those in the podcast page later, but if you could just give them a shout out now.
Okay, well, thank you to you both. I've had a really enjoyable start to my day. My website is www.itsmedicine.co.nz. That's the petition website. It's got where we're up to and what our aim is. And once the petition goes to government, that will actually transform into an information and product website around the 1st of November. So we're actually going to keep that going. So go there, and we'll post educational links, which will include the Rick Simpson Oil and you guys and Kevin, and international connections. I have a lot of communication with Australia. Normal New Zealand, Chris Fowley, he's a great supporter as well. That's an international group. So yeah, go to It's Medicine. I've got a Facebook page as well. Go along and like that and share that, or even just my own Facebook page is a constant information source for cannabis as a medicine. So thank you to you both for having me. It's been an awesome start to what's looking to be like a beautiful sunny New Zealand day.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for getting up so early for us. Most of the people we speak to are night owls and wouldn't dream of getting up at 6 a.m. to talk to us on the radio, but thank you for making it.
Yeah, I have to say that Alex was a night owl and would never have got up in the morning, and part of me was... And often through the last 18 months, part of me goes, really, do I want to do this? And I can just hear his voice saying, yeah, you do, Mum, because it'll make a difference for the world. So getting up early hasn't killed me. And if I have any anxiety, I can always have a puff or rub my balm, and I've got the medicine. Thanks, boys.
Thanks so much, Rose. And please keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job, and I wish you all the success in the world. We'll put you on our links page on Raconteurs News as well, so hopefully get you a bit of traffic over there to the site, because I know a lot of our listeners are interested in this subject, and if they can help, I'm sure they will. So thanks everyone for listening. Thank you so much, Rose, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rose.
It just remains for me to mention what we've got lined up for you in October. Oh, sorry, we've got a show on Before Dr. Rock on Thursday night. That's a pre-record that we did with Gordon Bowden and his chums from Pandora's Box Limited. So that'll be our September update with them. And then on the 4th of October, next Tuesday... Oh, yes, we'll be joined by Trudy from the Bamba campaign, and we'll be talking about the Jeremy Bamba case, which is something that Jason's managed to line up to us, so I'm looking forward to that one. Then on the 11th, we've got Dave Jarvu, who was in the chat room the other week when we had Anthony Carlin on. He's coming on. He's going to talk to you about his own personal court case over mortgages and other issues. Then on the 18th, we'll be joined all the way from Texas by Nick Redfern, who did an excellent talk at Homeforth at the conference we went to the other week about Men in Black. I don't know what Nick will be talking about with us, but I'm sure he'll give a very interesting interview. And from what Nick's saying, we might have a job stopping him at 2 hours, so we might have to run into the third hour for that one. And then to round out October, on the 25th, we'll be joined by Max Stootley, who we met over at Nottingham a couple of months ago. And Max will be talking about the glosser and how the legalese English is not really what we think it is. It's something completely different. So thank you, everyone, for listening. We're going to play out with a tune. Thank you once again, Rose. I do hope you'll come back on again after your petition's been successful and give us the good news. So thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll be back on Thursday night with Pandora's Box and then on Tuesday again. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Ta-ra a bit.